Okay, so we're on Chaf Ahmed Aleph in Yevamos Daf 20. So what does it mean when she's a full wife? Shemagar beget. He has to divorce her. Not only that, umachziru. Like all other husbands who divorce their wives, as long as there's been no intervening marriage, he can marry her again. Well, you might think that why was he allowed to marry? This was his brother's wife. She was an Eishes Achiv. So when the brother died without children, there's a mitzvah of yibum, so he's allowed to marry her. Now he divorced her. Maybe the old Isser comes back. No. Once she's his wife, she's his wife. And everything that happened before goes away. Well, if you're going to tell me, though, that from this pasuk, that there's a status of Yevama remaining, that maybe that woman that he married should still be in some way a Yevama, and besides the get, it should require Chlitza. Once a shiny Hasam, the Amar Kra Ulakhololi Isha. Even Shalacha Nasakisha Lachol Dover. Once he marries her with Yibum, it's his wife, period. And there's no Iachi Yachanami. So over there as well, why do we say that in the case of Levi, that's how the Rabbanon explain Eishes Achiv Rabbi Yolmo, that there's still a Yevama status on her. Well, why don't we say over there that once she became Shimon's wife, it's wife L'chol Dover? Because we have that word v'yidma. Okay, umara isa. So why did you learn it for the din of Eishes Achiv Ba'ilama? Why didn't you learn the din that maybe when a man divorces his wife that he married b'yibum, he needs to give her chlitza? So the Gemara says no. Mistavra shadi hetera ahetera. Heter stays with heter v'shadi isura isura. And the isur, the pasuk that relates to isur, remains with the Eishes Achiv Shla B'Lama according to Chachamim. That's how the Chachamim answer. It's a difficult thing for them to hang their hat on, but that's what they hang their hat on. Ula Rab Shimon, the Amar Hoilu Ba Umatza Beheter, B'Lam Dalav Shavachas Be'Isser, right? His svara Elameato Achoso Me'imo. Let's say he has a sister, but only from the same mother. Right? He has a brother from the same father, is not related to his sister, who married her. And then Levi is born, and then Shimon dies, or the original woman dies, now she's an erva, because it's a choisai. But based on your learning, Shimon, when Levi was born, there was no problem. He found her beheter. What do you mean beheter? Isra choisel heichen azal. What do you mean? It's a sister. Where did that Isra go? So hachanami Isra achiv shlei ba'olam leichen azal. So they ask on Rab Shimon. You, Rab Shimon, held that Levi is born and Shimon has already married this woman, so he never found her be'isra. Why not? She was an Eishes Achiv shlei ba'olam. Where did that go? So he says it's a difference. Achoisoi is an isser that can never go away. Your sister is your sister is your sister. Hi isser de lesle hatera, never has a heter. But hi isser de lesle hatera. But here Eishes Achiv is a different type of erva. Eishes Achiv is a isser that goes away if the brother dies without children, and that's why Reb Shimon can say that the isser of Eishes Achiv Shalom B'Lama goes away. Madoch the Yisra Choisei doesn't go away. Okay.
Doesn't that Isser go away even if the brother has children and dies?
There is an Isser, no. The Isser.
Eishes Achiv, can you marry Eishes Achiv after a person's brother dies? Can you marry Eishes Achiv?
Not if he had children.
Really?
That's close.
That's the whole point.
I thought, okay.
Yibum is Eishes Achiv is a erva forever. Only in the case if the brother dies without children,
is there a heter? Okay.
There's no other answer.
Kenny, I don't know what you are thinking here, but it's not.
Okay.
Sometimes I'm more slow.
No,
Usually
no,
I'm
no,
just
no.
slow.
No,
Sometimes
no,
I'm more
Kenny is
slow.
absolutely correct. The only erva that otherwise goes away
Achos isha.
is achos isha. That means the sister of your wife. After the death of one's wife, you can marry her sister. That's the only example of an erva that goes away. Okay. In fact, Kenny saw it inside in the Even Ezer because we were looking at that on Shabbos.
Yeah, Ernie.
Yeah.
How did Yaakov end up marrying two sisters?
Some say because he wasn't in Eretz Yisrael, and that's why when did Rachel die? The moment
When they went back to it,
the moment he crossed into Eretz Yisrael, Rachel dies.
but where do we the Torah?
Some say that the Avos didn't hold by the it's before Matan Torah. It's the issur of marrying two sisters is only by Matan Torah.
Yeah, but
Okay.
they said that they kept all the
Okay,
Except that.
Torah cooler, no?
so
Except that.
So that's why the answer that people say it was in Chutz La'aretz, and therefore and then when he came into Eretz Yisrael, he couldn't have the two sisters.
Let me
So
ask you,
we
where
can
is
marry,
the
in Chutz La'aretz we can marry two sisters then.
Say again?
In Chutz La'aretz now we can marry two sisters then.
No, because once Matan Torah came around, you don't have a heter of that.
Ernie, where does the Ebenezer learn that out from that you can marry one sister? The
That's-
sister
we're gonna
killed
learn
one.
Yeah, Achos Isha. We've had that before in the Gemara.
I know, but it's not from the
The Torah says it beferish. There's a
Really?
The Torah says beferish, correct. The Torah says beferish.
not on the dinam of erva.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
not-
The Dinam of Erva, we'll see. Achrei Shema- I'll read you the pasuk. It's a first stick of pasuk.
Okay.
And then in the Shulchan Aruch, Even Ezer, he brings you that halacha psuka. Okay. It gets a little easy. The last three blot is famous in Yevamos. That's the Zika. We learned that blot, Zika, and then the Levi, the 3-4. That's it's going to come back later on. But this is a known difficult piece. But Baruch Hashem, Mishnah. Klal Arubi Yevama. Kol shehi iser erva. Lo choletzes v'lo misyabemes. If one of the brothers is married to a full-fledged erva minat Torah to the other brother, the classic case, Reuven marries Shimon's daughter. You're allowed to marry your niece. Reuven dies, and Shimon's daughter falls to Yibum to him. There's no zika, there's no nothing that's created. Because
Erva.
if there's an Isser Kares and you try to give Kiddushin to someone who's got an Isser, it doesn't take hold. There's no Chalos in Kiddushin. So therefore, there's no Zika created either. There's no connection whatsoever. And therefore, it doesn't require Chlitza, and you cannot do Yibum, of course, because it's Usser. Okay. I'm giving this explanation for a reason. Isser Mitzvah, the Isser Kedusha, we'll see what those are. Choyletzes v'lo misyabemes. These are rabbinic isurim that you're not allowed to live with them. Minator you are. So yibum you can't do, but the zika is there. For example, let's say there's an isur lav. A kohen can't marry a grusha. A kohen gadol can't marry an almana. A person can't marry a mamzer. Can't marry a mamzeres. Or yeah. So in those cases, that's the Isser Lav. There's a Lav, Malchus, not Chorus. So if you try to give Kiddushin, the Kiddushin is Chal. You need a divorce. Bezdin's going to force you to divorce that woman. You're not allowed to live with her because it's a Lav. We can't keep you married that way. But there's Chalos. So therefore, there's a Zika there is. So Yibum you're not allowed to do because it's Usr. Chlitza you need because Midoraisa, there's a Zika. Achoysa sheyivimta. Choyletzes oy misyabemes. This is dealing with two brothers married to two sisters, and then the two brothers die, and the two sisters fall le'erva, fall to Levi. Rashi, achoysa shel erva kishehi yevimta, gon shenaflu shtei achayos mishnei achim, right? Two brothers, Reuben and Shimon, are married to two sisters. They both die. They fall to Levi. Achas asur mishum erva. And let's say one of these two women that were married to Reuben and Shimon is Levi's daughter. So Reuben is married to Levi's daughter. Shimon is married to a sister. Of Levi's daughter. No problem. And then Reuben and Shimon die. So Achoysa shelever kishi yevimta, kigon shenaflu shtei achiyos mishnei achim, two sisters from two brothers, ha'achas asur mishum erva, kigon shehi kalosoi oy chamoso. Now you can't work with daughters. One of them is his daughter-in-law or his mother-in-law. So the two women fall to Levi. One of the women is an erva, and the other is a strange woman to him. So then oichoy letzes omis yabemes. The achos ha'erva is an erva. The low pog, and therefore he's not being poigea, but achos zekukoso.
Right, because the ladies are sisters, but the Zika isn't Chal because sister A is a
It's
erva.
not related to him.
So therefore she's nothing. She falls aside and he's still got to do
It says
Chalitzer Yibum with sister too.
to the remaining sister.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Isser mitzvah. What is an example of Isser mitzvah? Shnios medivrei sofrim. These are rabbinic, for example, grandmother, great grandmother. They're not minat Torah. They're only min Rabbanan and others. So minat Torah you can't do yibum. Excuse me, Rabbanan you can't do yibum. But minat Torah you'll have to do chlitza because there will be a zika. What's Isser Kedusha? Almana l'kohen gadol, right? A kohen gadol can't marry a widow. Grusha v'chlutza l'kohen hedya. Mamzeres unesin l'Yisrael. Or Bas Yisrael unesin u'mamzer. These are the Isser Kedusha. Now, what is the word klal doing there? Klal asuma, what is it coming to include? Amar Rafram Bapapa lasu yitzara islandus. To include the case of a co-wife with a woman who cannot give birth. They're an islandess. Of course, the islandess herself cannot get yibum because she can't be moilid. But if there's a co-wife, she's also potter. And that's the klal omer biyavama. Ravasi. That Ravasi held that at Sora islandess, because the islandess is asura because of Eshasach, because it's not mutter to be miyabimer, because the whole point of doing yibum is to have children. She's not really an erva to him, right? She's an islandess. She's rejected for a different reason. But according to Ravasi, that patters the tzara as well.
Why would that pater the Sarah? I mean, the whole point of Yibum is to have kids for the brother.
But since you're not allowed to live with the islandess, it's an erva to live with her because she's an Eshasach that cannot be molid.
So you would say that there's no Zika with an islandess?
No, it's exactly like an erva according to this shita. It's exactly like if it was his daughter. Because what's the whole point of Yibum? To lahakim zera hameis. And if she cannot be lahakim zera hameis, there's no heter to be miyabimer. If there's no heter to be miyabimer, she's treated like an erva. What do we do with the tzora of an erva? she's potter from Chlitz and Yibum. That's the exact answer to Kenny's issue. Ravasi holds that a Tzara islandess is potter. The Ikadi Amri, other people say, Kol Shisra is Sir Erva, who does Sirat Sarasa. Not like we just learned. That if the prohibition is an Erva Midoraisa, that potters the Tzara. Halo Isra Erva Tzarasa lo Asire. But if it's not, if the reason why you can't be Miyabimur is not because of Erva, then the Tzara is not Osir Lemute Mai, Amar Avrat Lemute Tzara Ilalinus, so like Ravasi. That would allow you to be Miyab in the Tzara Ilalinus. What's the halacha in the Rambam? Naflu Yibum Shtei Noshim Shalach Echad. Vaisachem Em Ilalinus, Hare Tzarasa Muteres, Choyletzes O Mitzabemes, Shalo Kedivi Ravasi. We don't paskin like Ravasi, we paskin like the second version in the Gemara. Okay? Now, Achosa Shehi Yevimta. We described this complicated case of daughter-in-law of Levi, who also has a sister who's not related to him. Right? Reuven was married to the daughter-in-law. Shimon is married to the daughter-in-law's sister. There's no Isser for Levi to marry the daughter-in-law's sister. And both Reuven and Shimon die. And those two women, his daughter-in-law and the wife of Shimon, fall to Levi. So we said in the Mishnah, the other wife, you could do either Chlitza or Yibum to her. Now let's see. Achosa Deman. Whose sister we talking about? Ilema de Isser Mitzvah. Are we talking about Shnias Midrabon? Even the Midaraisa Ramya Kameh Pagabacha Zukukoso. You can give Kiddushin to such a woman. Therefore, there would be Zika. And if he lived with her, he lived with either of the sisters, well, he can't live with the daughter-in-law, but with the other woman, he would be being Poigeya with Acha Zukukoso. Because if the Yisra is not Kares, so we're talking about Achosa de Isra Erva. It's got to be daughter-in-law or mother-in-law in Isra Erva. Then there's no Zika from that side. So when you do Yibum to the remaining woman, it's not a problem. There's no Achoy Zikukaso because there's no Zika on that side. The side that has the Erva has no Zika. Normally when two sisters fall, you have Zika to both of them. And if you live with either of them, you're being Poigea Ba'achoy Zikukaso. That doesn't exist here because one of them is Isser Erva to him. Okay. Then the Mishnah said Isser Mitzvah Shnias. What is that? We said it's Midrabanan. Now, my Karele Isser Mitzvah, why do we call that kind of prohibition Isser Mitzvah? Because it's a mitzvah to listen to the Chachamim, and these are Chachamim laws. Then we said Isser Kedusha, Amon L'Kohen Gadol, Grusha V'Chlus L'Kohen Hedet. My Karele Isser Kedusha. Why is this called Isser Kedusha? Chsiv by Kohanim Kedoshim Yiyu L'Elokeihem. Tanya Rabbi Yehuda Mechalef. Rabbi Yehuda learns just the opposite. Pum fakert. Isser Mitzvah is Amon L'Kohen Gadol, Grusha V'Chlus L'Kohen Hedet. But my Karele Isser Mitzvah. The Chsiv Eila Mitzvahs. Because that parsha is described Eila Mitzvahs. And what's Isser Kedusha? Shnios B'divrei Sofrim. It's these gzeiras that Chachamim kept you away from the grandmother and other distant relatives. V'amai Karele Isser Kedusha. Amar Abaya, Kol Makayim Divrei Chachamim Nikra Kadosh. Whoever listens to the Chachamim is called holy. Amar Le Rava. Kol She'enim Makayim Divrei Chachamim Kadosh Hu D'Lo Mikri, but Rosh Nami Lo Mikri. What if he doesn't listen to the Chachamim? He's not a Kadosh, but he's not a Rasha? Of course he's a Rasha. Elo Amar Rava Kadosh Atzmacha B'Muter L'cha. When the Chachamim came up with Shnius Midrabanan, these people were permitted to live with you. And you are making yourself holy by things that you stay away from, even though they're permitted to you. Okay, the Mishnah gave us the example, Amon L'Kohen Gadol. Kaposik V'Tani. The Mishnah didn't make a distinction. Lo Shna Min HaNesuin V'lo Shna Min HaYerusin. A Kohen Gadol, L'chora, They make no distinction. Let's say somebody had given this almana kiddushin only, and then the man had died. So she's an almana min kiddushin. Versus if she actually went through nisuin, and then the husband died, she's an almana min nisuin. And our Mishnah made no distinction. Said almana l'kohen gadol no matter what. So bishlam min nisuin. A kohen gadol who marries an almana who actually lived with the husband through cohabitation, she's not a basula anymore. So there's a din, ubsula yikach. He has to take a basula. And there's a law of don't take an almana. So by a almana min anisuin, asay v'lo tasay. There's both violation of an asay and a lo tasay. Then you have the asay of yibum. Ve'ein asay, doicha lo tasay v'asay. So I understand why a kohen gadol would not be able to miyabim and almonim and anisuin, because the asay of yibum will not come to nullify the combination of an asay and lo tasay. Ela ben irusin. But if there were two brothers, one of the brothers was a kohen gadol, the other brother had married a woman with kiddushin only and then died, and this almonim and irusin falls to the kohen gadol. There's a law of don't marry an almana. She's still a basula, right? Lo tasei gredahu. If he lives with her, it's only a regular lav. Yavo asay v'yitche lo tasei. We know throughout Shas, there's a principle that a mitzvah asay can be doicha lois asay. For example, mitzvahs of Mila is doicha tzaras, right? Or the mitzvah of tzitzis is doicha shatnes. So why don't we say that the mitzvah of yibum would come to override the lo tasei? Why do we need yivimto? It should have just said va'alsa ashayra. Take her to the bezdin. Shein tamadama yivimto, ma tamadama yivimto. You know what? Yesh lecha yivama achas she'ola lechlitza ve'ena ola leyibum. There is a yivama who can only get chlitza, not yibum. Eza zu chayve lavin. Anytime there's a chayve lav, where you're not allowed to marry them through a prohibition only of a lav, not kares, this pasuk describes that you're only allowed to do chlitza to them and not yibum. That's why a kohen gadol cannot be miyabem and almonim and ayrusim from this pasuk. Freik the Gemara, maybe ve'ema chayve krisus. Maybe it's that example. It only applies to prohibitions of chayve krisus. Amar kraviim lo yachpotza ish lo kachas. That if the man doesn't want to take, which implies it's up to him, hachafetz miyabim. So it cannot be an erva. It can't be one of the chayve krisus, because it has nothing to do with his chafetza. A man can decide, a kohen can decide to give kiddushin to a grusha, and there'll be chalois. But so there it's in his chafetz, but not chayve krisus. Okay, so he said, "Kol oil liyibum, oil lechlitza v'kol she'ein oil liyibum, ein oil lechlitza." Whoever can get yibum can get chlitza. Who cannot get yibum cannot get chlitza. So how can you answer me that these are cases that can only get chlitza even though there's no yibum? And yachi chayve lavin nami, and that should work for chayve lavin because he can't be miyavim them. So harabi rachmana yevimto. We have the limud of yevimto that says you can do it. So again, we've asked Umara Isa, where is the logic? Why do you choose one? So we answer, Mistavra chayve lavin tafsebu kiddushin. When a kohen gives a grusha kiddushin, there's a chalois kiddushin. Bezdin will not allow them to stay together, but it's koifel agarish. But there's tfis and kiddushin. So there we can say that there's a shaychus to chlitza. Chayve klisis lo tavzeh b'kiddushin. There's no kiddushin at all by there as well. I'm going to stop here because we've gone almost an hour. And then I think tomorrow's a little smaller. We might be able to do the blot and a half. We'll see. We'll take it as it comes. Okay?
Oh, yeah, complicated.
Oh, yeah,
Tomorrow-
beautiful, Arnie. Thank you. Very clear.
Good night.
Tomorrow we'll